Okay, everybody, we have had the opportunity to show you some of these cars in picture form, and we've had an opportunity a couple months ago to actually look at a real FX car.
That's right, Rick. And we're going to take you there now and take a look at this 1964 Dodge Coronet. Wait till you see this car.
It's awesome. It is the actual Charlie Allen's Atlantic Dodge Flyer FX car. And I'll tell you what, folks, come outside with us and we'll show you how cool this is.
You know, Bill, in the mid-'60s, there was one thing you could count on. Every Saturday and Sunday at the local drag strip, there's going to be a match race.
Yes, there
and
was.
Through the heavy times of the mid-'60s, it was even Friday, Saturday, Sunday, any day that ends in Y. And, you know, these factory race cars that came out, these were FX cars, and they were factory-backed race cars. I mean, the factory built them for these racers, and they sent them on tour, and they went out and they were kicking the crap out of the Fords and the Chevys and the Plymouths. They were all fighting for supremacy.
Right. FX meaning, folks, factory experimental.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, these cats were out for blood, man. And I'll tell you what, at the Charlie Allen's Atlantic Dodge Flyer.
And folks, I tell you what, we are so privileged to bring you this car because it truly is a piece of racing history.
Yeah, it's actually one of 100 lightweight cars that was supposed to start out as a super stock car, and did, but when Charlie Allen got involved with the FX stuff, he downright took an axe to that car, altered the wheelbase, and I mean just took it apart, and I'll tell you what, it's not only a rare car, it's gorgeous, and it's a mind blower.
And folks, let me tell you this. I know we're all used to the flopper style funny cars, but this actually originated the funny car name. Because when they pushed the wheels forward on these cars, someone came up with the phrase, gee, that really looks funny, hence funny car.
That's exactly right. And this is the very one of these cars that started that whole thing up until to the cars you see today, which are the flip-top funny cars that you can't even tell a Cougar or a Toyota from a Chevy. And I mean, at least this, you know, that's a Coronet. You can look at that's a Coronet all day long.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you what, folks, we're going to take a real in-depth look at this car, unique parts of this car that are really unique, which makes it what it is, an FX race car.
Folks, this is a 426 Hemi engine. What's special about this one is this engine actually has aluminum heads.
Correct.
And now when they came from the factory, they came with two big 4-barrel carburetors.
Yeah, big flying toilet bowls, we used to call them. They're giant.
And but Charlie Allen opted to go with the Hillborn injectors, which this car is still equipped with. And this car ran on methanol,
Yep.
an alcohol car.
An alcohol car, basically what an alcohol funny car is today. Also, too, this car has some of the original motor. It's got the original Hillborn fuel pump in it. Now, if you guys can, you know, maybe we can get to show you that. But that's some really rare old equipment that's on this car that's still there. And I'll tell you what, at the time, that was state of the art.
And lightweight everything, lightweight sheet metal fenders, and these are steel.
Yes. These are steel, but thin stamped steel.
Right.
And also, too, check this out. If you grab this fender here, look at that. If I don't even know if you guys can hear that, how lightweight that is.
Boing!
It is exactly that. It is. It's not aluminum because the sanctioning bodies outlawed the use of aluminum on these cars as of '65. So what they did was, there's 100 ways to skin a cat. These engineers knew what they were doing. They made everything out of steel, but super, super thin steel.
Right.
I mean, this hood you can push up with 2 fingers. I mean, it is something else. And I'll tell you what, everything in here is definitely lightweight. There's no fender wells and they're gone. And I mean, that was what these cats used to make these things launch and a lot lightweight, because actually this is probably, what, a 3,700 pound car? Scaled down to probably what now is probably about 3,200 pounds.
Right.
And I'll tell you, that's still a lot of weight
Sure
to push
is.
on one of these babies. So,
Also, we kept this car legal for today's use, where he hooped the front end and a different engine plate, which he said really looked hacked up.
yeah, he said it was, well, like he said, Charlie Allen actually took an axe to this car. And I mean, just chopped the body apart. I mean, they didn't care. It wasn't their car. All they wanted to do was go fast. It didn't matter. So, bam, they just started hacking away at these things, and this is what they got. But yeah, for this car actually to run on a drag strip today, it has to have the chassis in front.
Right.
The roll bar on this car, the pictures we see of this car had a loop, one loop roll bar. Now it's got, looks like it's got an 8-point cage in it. Stuff that you need to have to race these cars down the track today if he would want to. I don't know if I'd want to. I think I'd keep it in the museum where it belongs. But we're going to take another. Now this is the motor. Now as soon as Bill and I start to look over the car, we'll show you a little bit more stuff on this car. There's a whole lot of stuff I can't wait to show you. Okay, folks, I'll tell you what. Another thing about this car is cool. I'm not supposed to say I'll tell you what, but that's okay. I'll tell you another thing about this car. These headlights are what is it, 50?
A 1957
Plymouth Fury hubcaps.
Right. You ever seen the movie Chris
Saw in the middle
Those hubcaps.
That's them. And I'll tell you what, as you walk around this car, you're going to find that the Coronets had four headlights. So what they did was they took 3 grills, sawed them in half, and sectioned them together to make one grill. And then they put they took the hubcaps, cut the centers out of them, and put them in there for headlight buckets. It's just way cool, man.
And look at this. They're put together, actually pop riveted together, and they're pretty cool. They match up perfect.
Yeah, and even the A-frame and stuff, and here's all Swiss cheese. They took a lot of care into pulling weight out of these cars because they needed them as light as they could possibly get them. So if you got down in here, you'd look at the A-frame and all that stuff. That's all got big holes in it, where they just sawed that stuff out to take the weight out of that car. And again, folks, I can't get over these bumpers. I love them. Look at that. That's a steel bumper.
Unbelievable.
And I'm like Superman. I could bend it. No problem.
Hey, folks, especially you hot rodders, look at this. You notice anything missing inside this wheel? No front brakes. And the racers back then, they did that just to cut down on the weight of the car. I mean, every little ounce that they could strip off this car made you go faster. And look at these headers. These headers, one of the tubes of the headers actually comes around the outside of the frame rail, which is very cool. And I see Mark opted to go expensive and have nice jet hot coated headers on this car. Everything, you know, about this car is pretty much, you know, the way it was in '64, other than the car is NHRA legal today.
You know, Bill, check this out. Can you tell by looking at this windshield what's odd about it?
It's got a big bubble in it.
It's got a big bubble in it. And I'll tell you what, from what I'm getting from that NASCAR invented these things to cheat in NASCAR racing. Because it's bubbled, it gives it some of an aerodynamic, you know, function, and they started using them in drag cars. And I'll tell you what, that is, if you can get down and see that, that is one bubbled up windshield, and that's just another little trick that these FX cars used to win.
You know, I'll bet you, beside the fact that it made the car a little more aerodynamic, with the spoiled air at the top of the windshield, it probably created a little bit of downforce on the roof of this car.
I'll tell you what, you know what, that's probably right, you know? Sure, I bet it had 2 functions. But I'll tell you what, I've never seen one quite with a bubble like that the way this one is.
Smoky eunuch, eat your heart out.
That's right. Okay, another interesting thing about these cars is scrub off weight off these cars. Folks, I'm going to tell you, I open this door, I could probably pick this door up with one hand. That's how light it is. It is a thin sheet metal. It's got, the panels are ultra thin. It's got aluminum hinges. And I'll tell you what, every piece of glass, what looks like glass in this car, except for the back window, is plastic. What is either Lexan, plexiglass, whatever they had, what they used in Air Force canopies and jets back in the 60s, that's what all this stuff is made out of. But I'll tell you something, you could, I mean Superman, I could lift this door with one finger. And I'll tell you what, if you start to look at inside this car, what you see is what you got. This car, when it came from the factory, Charlie got this as a lightweight super stock car. So the only thing that was in this car was a mile per hour. All I had was a gauge, just a speedometer. That was it. No radio, no heater, nothing. If you look down, you can see that the mounts for the seats are Swiss cheese out of aluminum. Those came from the factory that way. That stuff was all in this car when Charlie got it. And I'll tell you something, it has it nice and set up real good. If you can get around and look, like I said, all it is bare bones necessity.
Now, keep an eye on this fire bottle, folks. Now, this car certainly didn't come with that fire bottle in it, and keeping up with the NHRA legal aspect of this car, this is what some of us racers call a goo bottle. Back in the day, they used to run Halon, and Halon's a chemical that just removes oxygen from the air But this car is completely set up with all the fire suppressing equipment.
Right, all up to NHRA standards. Yep, you could run this car on the track as is now. But like I said, it came with, there was no radio, no heater, just the speedometer. Okay, another other aspect of this car that came from the factory for lightweightness and the easiest way out is how I'd like to put it for weight, to get rid of the weight, is again, you can see that the aluminum brackets for the seat, these seats are out of an A100 Dodge van. I mean, they're plain Jane, nothing to them seats. Has it done up real nice in a gold colored covering here. It's real nice, and I like to tell you what, that seat probably weighs 10 pounds. And as I'm telling you right now, folks, this is one of the most interesting pieces of this car. Now, as you can see, there's a shifter knob up here, and it's a shifter like in your regular street car. But in here, it also has your indicators where you would be gear selector, or prindle as they call it. If you look close, this one has reverse at top. Then it goes to neutral, first, second, and drive. If you're wondering why, you think, oh, that's just a mistake. No, it isn't a mistake. When these cats race these cars in the super stock classes, they put reverse at top. So these guys could not, if they were opted to shift the car as they were going on track, they could not ever stick this car in reverse and blow the tranny out of it. That is one of the most right parts of this car that I'm glad that kept on here. And I'll tell you, you know, it's just really, really awesome.
That is really cool, Rick. Hey folks, look at this. This is some updated stuff to this car. This is a regular race shifter. I believe it's Mr. Gasket, but this is common equipment in a race car today. If you're wondering what these two levers are on the side here, well, one of them is the fuel shutoff. When they get to the end of the track, they actually just shut the fuel off to the motor and the engine stops. This one is the parachute lever. And most people think, wow, look at that car, it's got a parachute, it must go really, really fast. And another upgraded outfit is this tachometer that you see up here. And the old electronic or the old battery operated Sun Tac just doesn't cut it anymore with this motor. So this one's got the telltale switch on it and the shift light. And that's like I say, a common piece of equipment in a modern day race car. You know, look at this beautiful paint on this car. Folks, I tell you, it is just meticulously restored. Every aspect of this car was as original as could get it as far as when Charlie was driving this car. And I want you to look at this plum paint job on top of pearl white with the lavender stripe, and all the lettering on this car is hand painted. If you look down the side of this car, you can actually see brush strokes in the lettering, and it is just absolutely flawless. This car is meticulously maintained.
Okay, now as we come to around to the back of the car, on these cars again, the stress on these whole things was weight, and everything that they did was lightweight. They took this deck lid on this trunk, and I'll tell you what, this is like one piece of sheet metal. And I mean, you could lift it up with your finger. It's again awesome, awesome white pearl paint. This parachute pack, as Bill showed you earlier, the lever inside the car, they put the brakes on, they pop the chute, they shut the fuel off, this thing's coming to a stop. Again, the back bumper on this car is again very, very, very tiny, thin steel bumpers. And I'll tell you something, here's a rare find. This is a reverse blackout. Now, it tells me that if you can find some of these, if you can even find them, they're about $400 to $500. And this is something that, you know, all these cars had reverses because these cars came from the factory. So this is a little trick they did for more of a cosmetic look, but that's a reverse blackout. Again, the light fender, the light deck, and a nice big parachute to stop her when she's coming to the end of the strip. Okay, everybody, we're getting right down to it now on the idea of what an FX ultra wheelbase car actually is. As you're looking at the car, you can tell that this car looks like the front end is a lot farther out than the back, and the back tires are moved a lot forward. So it gives a perception that this car would probably tip over backwards if you stood on the gas. Now the reason why they did all this is to distribute weight, because back then when you hit the gas on one of these babies, you wanted all that weight transferring to the rear tires. Now what these people did when they decided to chop these things apart and make them true altered wheelbase cars, they took the stock location of the fender well, which I'm just gonna guess would probably be about right here. And you know, what they do is they cut this out, leave it out, sheet metal all the way up to where they want the fender, the wheel well to start. So they'll weld this back in and becomes one solid piece looking like it did come from the factory. But in essence, what it has done is it's moved the rear wheels, I would say 12 inches on this car.
Okay, now the front end, keep in mind that the front fender well has also been highly modified to the front. And what they would do is they would take and cut a section out of the front fender and then weld a piece of sheet metal into the fender and actually have to make the complete piece on this fender and stretch it out. And what they do is they would move the whole front axle of this car, K-member and all, forward. And I believe when we did the math, it was 108-inch wheelbase.
Starting stock.
Right.
What they did was because they moved the rear wheels forward 12 inches, the front wheels forward 4 inches, you have a difference of 8 inches.
And it really did make a difference on the drag strip for shifting the load and the weight of this car all to those big back ballones, making this thing go down the drag strip like a rocket.
Like a rocket.
You know, the whole idea behind this factory experimental car is weight saving and getting all the weight of this big piece of steel to ride on those big ballones.
Weight distribution.
And to make this thing rocket down the drag strip just as fast as it possibly could. And you know, it took some brains for these guys to really do this. And take a look at this frame rail in this car. This thing, right?
Yeah, they sure did. And I suppose, you know, when they start to cut that weight out of there, you would be surprised. I've heard stories that these cats can cut off to up to almost 500 pounds of weight off these cars by either grinding on the body panels, cutting holes in everything that's solid, and just making it as light as possible, keeping in mind that it has to be safe because the thing does go about 150 miles an hour in the day. And you know, you had to keep it as light as possible. And again, if you look at that frame rail, they definitely had the idea that this was going to be one light race car.
Give us some history about how you found this car and give us some details about its restoration.
Well, thanks. This car came from a friend of mine I'd known for a number of years. He lived in Janesville, Wisconsin, and was into cars galore, and I mean any kind of car. Classics to hot rods to you name it, he liked cars. He subsequently moved to California thinking if I'm going to be in cars, I need to be in California where the cars are. And we remained in contact. This is one of these cars that he found and called me and said, got any interest in an altered wheelbase car? And I went, ooh, yes. So that's how it all started. At any rate, the history of the car is we were very fortunate to find one that was intact. Most of these cars were severely butchered. I mean, where the floors are gone and this is gone and that's gone.
Right.
This car has a funny history. Charlie Allen, of course, campaigned it for Atlantic Dodge for about 1.5 years, I believe. And after that went on to other different cars and sold the car to a guy named John Gardner. John Gardner raced the car in a different paint scheme, but pretty much the same car, not on alcohol, back on the carburetors again. John Gardner then went into an early flip-top funny car and managed to kill himself, unfortunately, in an accident in Southern California. Meanwhile, this car languishes under a tree in his parents' backyard from that time on. When Lynn Dowdy found it, that's where it was. When we picked it up at a body shop that had hauled it out of the backyard. It was just remarkable that the car was still so much there.
With that being said, what do you think she'll run now? If you ever, have you had her down on the track at all? Have you run the car once at all to see what it will do?
The car has not run yet. It will be. I've asked Brian Coleman to run the car. He's got a lot of altered wheelbase experience.
Sure, the Bell Dodge car.
I'd have to guess with today's tires, which are far superior to what they had at the time,
Not as hard as Superman.
we certainly should be able to keep it in the mid-nines. That's the goal, of course.
Yeah, I would say that would, and I would be one happy camper if that's how it went, because then you've lost nothing. Charlie could come here and run it just like he did in the old days with that kind of number.
You got to let us know when and where, and we will be there with cameras rolling, baby.
Yep, that's a fact. And again, I just can't thank you enough for having us here and showing us this beautiful car. It really does. It gives me real goosebumps just looking at it and knowing that that's the real car. You painstakingly went through this to continue it to be the same car, and just absolutely put your heart and soul in it, which it obviously shows, and brought this to us and all the folks that see the show.
Well, I appreciate your kind words. However, we have to give credit to the people that worked on this car. And those were Lamb Engines for the beautiful engine job.
Awesome work they do.
Caledonia Automotive for the, believe me, a beat up old race car is a tough car to straighten out and paint, for their excellent work. And Gary Jeffson for his restoration work. These are the guys that should take credit for this car.
Oh, sure.
I'm the keeper of the flame, that's about it. And we want to keep it that way and make it like it was.
And you certainly have. You are keeping the flame, and I bet when
Yeah.
that thing is lit, it's as hot as a can.
Right.
Yeah. But I can't thank you enough.
Thank
I wanna
you both.
You one more
Did you
time.
say candle? I want to say plasma torch.
Plasma torch? Either way, I'll tell you what. That's a nuclear bomb right there. I bet that thing is ready to blow a hole in the ground. It is so cool. And again, thanks again.
And one of these days we'll be doing it.
All right, sir. We'll be there with you.
You know, Rick, what a privilege it's been to feature this particular race car.
I mean, I really, like I said, I got chicken skin when they rolled it off the trailer when this thing. And I'll tell you, folks, this thing comes on a ramp truck too. I mean, he's even got that part right down to it. But has been an awesome host today, and let us bring this car to you, and for all the hard work. And I mean, this man truly loves what he's into, because I'll tell you what, when you see this, you're gonna want to say, man, this cat spared no expense and put his heart, and I mean it, put his heart in this car. It's that beautiful, don't you think?
Oh, by far and wide. Holy cow. The meticulous restoration on this car, and the way he's tried to keep it as period perfect as possible, yet NHRA legal.
Legal, right? Yeah. Believe it or not.
Wow, Rick. Charlie Allen's funny car, 60s funny car stuff. I mean, wow.
Yeah,
What
and
a
I'll tell
great
you, yeah, what a,
everything.
Yeah, it was so cool. And I'll tell you what, this show's an hour long. We could have done 4 hours on this.
Yeah.
Because there's so
Absolutely.
much information, and we just wanted to give you guys a real, kind of a brief 1 hour look at how funny cars evolved from stock cars in the 60s.
That's right. And look at the funny cars you see on the NHRA tracks today, folks, and do a little comparison to back in the 60s where they started.
Yep.
And you'll see a lot of the technical aspects of these cars are basically the same. I mean, it is power to weight ratio.
Yep.
Go from A to B.
Right,
You know,
and again, money took,
Oh, yeah.
money made everything. That's why,
Right.
that's why the factories were involved, and everybody wanted to be the top dog, and they did a good job of it, and they wrote history, and history is what we're bringing you today, and we're just really glad to bring it to you, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
Rick,
Billy.
Thank you again, my
Great
friend.
to see you.
Tune in next time to Way Out Willard's Wild World of Motorsports.
Adios.